meeting. We got to meet with staff from the 2 U.S. senators, the Federal Railroad Administration, and also Representative Herodopoulos. So it was a very, very good meeting. And it was really just to educate why that project is a good investment for the federal dollars. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And so I wanted to let you know about that. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Georgiana. Good job. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Georgiana? Okay, we'll move on. Next is the consent agenda. We only have one item on the consent agenda today. It's the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee meeting minutes for February 10th, 2025. I would look for. Yes. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Eric. I know that Eric made the seconded the motion.
Eric can't make a motion on TAC. TAC.
Yep.
Motion was made by Debbie Flynn.
Okay. Debbie made the motion. We'll need a second from the TAC. Steve Zabo made the second.
And from the CAC, can I get a motion, please? Motion from Bill Vollmer, second by Adam Kohler. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
From the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries unanimously. Okay, we don't have any action items today besides the consent agenda, so we'll move right into presentations. We have 3 presentations today. The first one is Mobility on Demand. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Kelly Fearon with Kittleson, and I'll be doing the presentation on the Mobility on Demand study that we're doing. So in this presentation, just going to cover a very brief overview of what exactly Mobility on Demand is, and then walk through the goals and objectives of the study that we've done. We'll talk more about the zone analysis performed and how we refine those zones and prioritize them, and then finally cover next steps, what you can expect to see. So for anyone that's not familiar with Mobility on Demand, you can really picture something like a shared Lyft or an Uber ride. Mobility on Demand is where a customer is able to request a ride when it's needed. It's not transit that you are requesting days or hours in advance. It's on-demand service. Typically, Mobility on Demand uses smaller vehicles. You can see some pictures on the slide here, vans, cars, smaller than your typical bus. Most customers tend to use app-based service, so you would use your smartphone, or there's often an option to call a phone number in order to book a ride. Mobility on Demand provides transit service within a defined zone. So a customer can travel within the defined zone, or they can be connected to fixed route if they want to travel beyond those boundaries. And there's a lot of vendors and other agencies that currently have Mobility on Demand service. So what would it look like if you wanted to call a ride? First, you would download the app and enter in your destination. You would get a notification that your shared ride is here, and you'd be able to travel within a defined set of boundaries, which would be advertised or promoted on the website when you put in your destination. And then finally, you'd be dropped off at your destination. So instead of getting on the bus and getting dropped off at a bus stop, you would be going directly to where you want to go. So that's one of the benefits of Mobility on Demand, is that it's very customer focused. You're getting direct service to go exactly where you want to go. You're not required to schedule this ride days or hours in advance or wait at a bus stop. And there's also the option to serve paratransit users by ensuring that the vehicles have those capabilities. Typically, Mobility on Demand is cost effective and is half the operational cost of fixed route service. It's able to broaden the reach of fixed route service because you're providing that first mile, last mile service. You can provide rides directly to things like transfer stations. And overall, it has the benefit like transit of congestion management, so reducing single occupancy vehicle trips because you're having a shared ride instead. And then finally, one of the benefits is that it's really dynamic. You can change the zones as needed, the transit agency can, and you can include key destinations without needing to put in physical infrastructure like a bus stop or a bench. So the purpose of this study was to identify if there are MOD zones that would benefit from this service. So what exactly would those areas be? And then coordinate with the local agencies to select one as a pilot and to assist with providing information about service providers and what are the funding options such as grants that would be available for a pilot. So for our study, the goals were really mirroring the TDP themes. So making sure that we're providing flexibility to serve areas of growth in the county, providing that first mile, last mile service to connect directly to fixed route, cost effectively increase ridership, especially where there's low ridership now or there's no fixed route available, and expand service, especially for transportation disadvantaged areas. So these are some of the steps that we performed in order to do this analysis, starting with literature review, conducted peer agency interviews to understand how mobility on demand is working for other agencies in Florida. And then we did a travel pattern analysis and suitability analysis that I'll cover in just a minute to really identify where could potential zones be within the county and what would those boundaries look like. We refined those by working directly with stakeholders through a series of interviews and conducted a prioritization. So this is a map of the initial suitability analysis, which was really based on 4 different variables: density, population and employment density, intersection density, transit ridership, and transportation disadvantaged areas. Really, to have successful MOD, what we're looking for is more low to moderate concentrations of population and employment density. If you have very high employment and population densities, there's a chance that fixed route will serve that very well. And so instead, you're looking for that more moderate concentration of people and jobs, and also looking at maybe where you have further intersections, so more moderate intersection density. So from our analysis, we have a total of 9 areas that we identified. Some of those areas do have overlap. You can kind of see it in the hatched area between Port St. John and Cocoa, for example. So the benefit of these zones would be you could have multiple zones and you could have overlap in areas like transfer stations where you want people to be able to get out of the zone and transfer to fixed route. The other zones that we identified included North Melbourne, Melbourne and West Melbourne, and then we broke Palm Bay into Palm Bay West, Palm Bay East, and Palm Bay South. All of those have that overlap with the transfer station in the middle. And we identified what would be ideal user types for these different areas. For example, with Melbourne and West Melbourne, we'd want to consider how we can serve both local riders, but also consider how the airport would play a role and serve tourists as well. Finally, we also have the Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral zone. Looking at this is the smallest of the zones, and we also considered what the user types would be, having more of a park once model and being able to kind of serve this area so you would stay within the zone. So after meeting with the stakeholders and refining those boundaries, we did a prioritization based on those initial goals that I talked about earlier. Really, the idea was to see now that we've set these boundaries, does it meet the goals that we set out to meet at the beginning? I want to clarify that all zones could still be feasible for future MOD service. This is really to see if one performed better than the others. So again, those 4 emphasis areas that we're considering are transportation disadvantaged population, land use, because we want to make sure that we're effectively serving areas that can grow in the future, providing first mile, last mile service to fixed routes, and resiliency, looking where there's ridership in areas with no fixed route service or if it's very low ridership on the existing fixed route. And so finally, this is a table that summarizes the zones and the prioritization. So the highest ranked was Cocoa. The prioritization score is out of 15. You can see the different variables that went into this. We estimated an annual operational cost based on approximately how many vehicles could be needed for the size zone and the expected ridership that could happen. A majority of these ranked very similar, and they all had 10, except for Port St. John, which scored at a 9. Part of that is because when we did the suitability analysis, we had already identified the areas that rose to the top. So this was kind of a further step to see, now that we'd set those boundaries, how did they compare against each other. So next steps will be further coordination with our local jurisdictions. You know, there's a potential for partnership or financial support based on stakeholder interest and engagement, and we'll move forward with selecting a zone for a pilot and creating an implementation framework. So what could it look like to actually put MOD in place? We'll be looking to see if there are funding opportunities. We are currently exploring what are grant funding opportunities and meeting with our local jurisdictions to discuss local funding options. And finally, all of this will be documented in our final report. So thank you so much for your time, and happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions? Yes, Greg.
Zones. I see, like you had stated, there's not a widespread in the 10. I would hope as you move forward, after maybe selecting your pilot zone, to tighten the zone requirements to better define your priorities of which zones would be implemented as funding becomes available.
Yeah, definitely. And part of the benefit of doing a pilot would be able to see, you know, did it live up to what the ridership estimates were? You know, how was that size boundary? So definitely gives some more data and information that helps to further refine for future phases.
Great, thank you. John.
So if you wanted to call a ride right now, it would pick you up, yep, right outside. And then if you were traveling, for example, within the boundaries of that zone, it would take you directly to your destination, so maybe your home. But if you want to go, you know, 20 miles south and it's outside of the defined zone, it would take you to a bus stop, and then you would transfer and get on the bus and continue to your destination. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Any other questions?
Yvonne?
Would this is a glorified taxi then?
It's like a shared ride service, yeah, similar to Uber and Lyft, but typically it's more than one person. So you might stop along the way and pick somebody else up if you're all headed towards the same way. But yeah, very similar.
Under the summary of zones, I see you have North Melbourne. Does this include South Melbourne as well?
I can go.
It says Melbourne,
Yeah, we tried to name them generally based on where they are to make it just simpler to understand, but Melbourne and West Melbourne is what we're calling that blue area, and North Melbourne is that yellow area.
Yeah, it looks like it is. It butts the Palm Bay zone there.
Covers all of it.
but if I may, also just step outside of, I see Palm Bay South. Does that include all the way to, I say, south of the border to our county line? Palm Bay South.
No, not south of.
So it does, I'm looking for Barefoot Bay.
Sorry?
That's Barefoot
Oh,
Bay.
no, it does not.
Okay, from Palm Bay South, where is that? Where does, I see it's not really defined on here.
Yeah.
Travis Hills with Kittleson, also working on a mobility on demand study. You'll hear talk about safety here in a couple minutes. So Barefoot Bay, Miko area was initially talked about with Space Coast Area Transit. What we saw in the data was that a lot of those trips were going south into Indian River County, and so we made an initial determination early on to kind of remove that area from consideration for mobility on demand specifically, because it kind of falls outside of the Space Coast Area Transit purview. So there is a need there, but it's kind of a need that needs to be handled within interlocal with Indian River County. So, yeah. Answer the question? All right.
Thank you.
Travis, before you leave, or Kelly may be able to answer that, I got two questions. Number one is can you provide us with a more detailed map? Show the boundaries and all that kind of stuff? And
Yeah, we have more zoomed in maps that we could provide.
Okay, and the second question is, when do you expect the final report to be completed?
Yeah, summer?
Okay, thank you.
So go to the next steps. So we have not selected that zone for the pilot yet. So we still have a few more steps to go until we get that final report.
Thank you, Travis. Peter?
Like rerunning the suitability analysis? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did look at what was the projected future employment from the model. So we did consider, what could be in the future, but it will kind of depend on the timeline of implementing one and that process. But all the variables could always be run again. We did look at kind of what's the projected growth too.
Sure.
Hi, you might have mentioned, I didn't hear it. Did you discuss what it would look for a cost for a consumer? Let's say I wanted to rent one of these to go home right now. What would that look like?
We haven't specified yet what that would be. Part of it would depend on which zone, how big the zone is. Other agencies charge a few dollars. $3 is something we've seen a couple agencies charge. But it does vary a little bit on how big your zone is, how much area you're trying to cover, how frequently you want to be able to be picked up. So we don't quite yet have that final number, but usually it's a few dollars.
I pulled up my Uber app over here, and if I wanted to go home right now, it would cost me $28. It would be significantly cheaper than that.
Yeah, typically transit agencies have, charge maybe $5 or less.
Yeah, Eric?
Recommendation would be made to cover the areas that have a higher percentage of disadvantaged populations based on funding constraints? Is that kind of a typical scenario on how this would work in terms of providing coverage?
It was one of the variables that we considered when we identified the areas to begin with. Part of it will be kind of refining the areas based on kind of local interest and funding, but it is something that we did consider and do think it is important.
So based on that, I know there's several criteria there. I think speaking about the Vieira area, 25% disadvantage, but I can tell you, firsthand that it's strongly felt that there are really no transportation options there. So that's so just that one criteria can not cover some real needs for the area because there are just no buses that run through.
Yeah, and that's why we looked at kind of those 4 areas. Does it have existing fixed route? How much is covered within a quarter mile of an existing fixed route, or is the fixed route have very low ridership right now? Just to kind of have a big picture of all the different factors that could go into it.
Hey, Pete?
We're going to be setting up kind of a framework, so trying to get it to that next step of this could be the area, this is what it could look like, but it wouldn't be kind of releasing a request for a vendor at this stage where we are. I don't know at this stage I have a full answer for that, but I don't know if you want to add anything.
There is already a database that transit uses during hurricane evacuations. Now that is putting them on a bus, but the bus is literally taking them from point A to point B. And so I don't see this necessarily serving that purpose, but it could be, you know, at a add-on to the function that they already do. Space Coast Area Transit already does an amazing job with evacuation and getting our, especially our underserved and our elderly populations to the special needs shelters around the county.
Yeah, Ginger.
Who is the customer that would use this service? So part of it would depend which area was selected, but we're really targeting, local people that live within the service zone. In some areas, for example, in Melbourne, West Melbourne, or by the beaches, with all the cruise tourists, we could be also targeting them. So it really just depends exactly which zone is selected. But all of you could be potential customers. Like, we're really trying to have a wide range of people that we're targeting. Yeah, I mean, part of the benefit of mobility on demand is you can serve suburban areas more efficiently than fixed route because, one, you're not taking the bus into big neighborhoods, and if you're not having a very high level of ridership, you're able to directly pick up, so it's better for the customer. And it would be very challenging to serve, the bus doesn't go down every single major route. So there's a lot of benefits to having a service like this that still provides the transit, and it's just more customized.
I understand why the service exists.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why we did the screening to see like where would be the areas with demand.
We have a question back here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked to Sarasota. Yeah, Volusia County runs a similar program. So, we see the service and similar densities across Florida.
We have a question back there.
We are still working those out. We have looked, like, for example, at Sarasota and Volusia to see, how big are their service zones. There's some best practices in the literature review, but it does differ a little bit when we're trying to pick up certain, areas or major attractors.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sir, back there.
Okay, sorry.
Can you say that? Oh, that the population and that they're so similar. Yeah. We did look at them as two separate variables to see how they are, but that's a great comment that you have both people living there and jobs. Oh, okay. We'll take a second look and just double check, but I think that's it. The Melbourne, West Melbourne. We do have a little bit of overlap between those. So there's a small section near the airport that would be both, but primarily in Melbourne, West Melbourne. Yeah, we met with Melbourne, and some of the concerns were making sure that we incorporate all of the city boundaries if such service was going to be implemented. So we have kind of refined, and we do have some overlap between the two.
Yeah, Peter, you had something?
Mm-hmm. I think it depends where you work and where you live, but yeah, the idea would be that you would use a service like this instead of everyone driving a single occupancy vehicle. So trying to attract some people that might not be using transit right now.
Veronica?
Mhm. We assumed for this analysis the same hours as fixed route. Yeah, to just kind of see as you compare the two of them, what that would look like.
Any other questions? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I mean, this could definitely provide a service for them, especially in that area with so much going on, even just being able to park somewhere and then take the mobility on demand shuttle the rest of the way or not move between them. I think it depends where you're coming from.
Right now, I think the challenge that exists is those people being able to find public transportation at a time that works within their work hours. That's a real big challenge for them. So I'm looking at this, if it goes the way I'd like to see it happen, it would be very, very helpful to our workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Bill?
Yeah, we're not making that distinction yet. Different vendors provide different alternatives. Some vendors do have primarily electric fleet, so we haven't yet made that distinction.
Yeah, Greg?
Yeah, one last question for me, and I don't know if you'd be able to answer it, but how does the mobility on demand correlate to an existing service called Volunteers in Motion that Space Coast Area Transit provides? Are you familiar with that program? I'll defer that question until
Okay.
Space Coast Area Transit comes up. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have a presentation titled Space Coast TPO Vision Zero in Action.
So, Mr. Chair, just wanted, before Travis starts the presentation, I kind of wanted to provide a little context as to why we're taking a step back and talking about our Vision Zero program. There have been a number of FDOT resurfacing projects that have included safety enhancements. And by the way, these were, enhancements that were needed due to a crash history. And also there's, traffic calming countermeasures to kind of help reduce the speed. And then there's been a lot of standalone projects as well. And, this has really prompted a lot of discussion at our TPO Governing Board. And there have been a lot of questions about the type of countermeasures, the reduction of lane width, which is one of the countermeasures to kind of help reduce that speed, to calm the traffic. And so we decided that we were going to kind of take a step back and do a little education as to what the TPO's Vision Zero program is, and then have Lorraine with the DOT Safety Office talk about some of those specific countermeasures. So I know for the new members, you may not be familiar with it, but for our veteran members, you know all about Vision Zero. But that is really what has led to this conversation, and to really kind of set it up for the governing board on Thursday. So Travis, I will kick it to you.
So I'll try to project, since I know the mics are kind of going in and out. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right. So I'm Travis Hills with Kittleson & Associates, here to present all things Vision Zero. I've been working with the TPO for going on 14 years and been working on their safety programs and policies and Vision Zero action plans basically since they started doing that in the early 2010s. So very familiar with safety, very familiar with Space Coast, and love working on the safety work with you all. So a little bit on our agenda today. So I'll talk very briefly about what is Vision Zero, and then really get into the Space Coast TPO Vision Zero action plan, getting folks up to speed that maybe weren't familiar with that document, and then talk a little bit about Vision Zero success stories that we've had over the last year, about 6 months to a year. So before I jump into Vision Zero, first, show of hands. Who has heard of Vision Zero and or know what Vision Zero is? Oh, awesome. A lot of hands raised. That's awesome. That's awesome. So some of this may be repetitive, and I apologize, but for the new folks that haven't heard this before, so Vision Zero is a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. So a little bit different from the traditional approach that you see up on the left side there, which is crashes happen, how many deaths are acceptable? Well, maybe 50. That's kind of the traditional approach, the maybe more reactive approach versus the proactive approach. So Vision Zero and ultimately the safe system approach, which is the pie chart that you see on the right, is the kind of vision for preventing traffic deaths, understanding that humans make mistakes, and then really that recognition, the realization, recognition that deaths and serious injuries are not acceptable on our roadways. So I'll talk a little bit more about the pie chart when we get into our strategies. I'll talk about that here in a few slides. So where is the Space Coast TPO at with their road to Vision Zero? So what you see up on the slide here is kind of the standard steps to achieve Vision Zero in your community. So you build on a Vision Zero fundamentals and the safe system approach. So like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about strategies. We assess the community's traffic safety situation, so something that the Space Coast TPO has been doing for the last 10 plus years. We engage our stakeholders and build the common understanding for Vision Zero, so something also that the Space Coast has been doing repetitively year over the last decade. And then getting that leadership and sustained commitment, so making sure that we're getting with TAC, CAC, the board, really getting everybody galvanized in the community to push Vision Zero forward. And then where are we at? We are here developing, implementing, and monitoring our Vision Zero action plan. So just a little teaser, we've already adopted 2 different iterations of the Vision Zero action plan. I'll talk more about those. So really we're in that implementing and monitoring stage, which hopefully then leads us to Vision Zero. So a little bit on that history that I've been mentioning. So back in 2014, 2015, the Space Coast TPO set aside funding to implement complete streets and road safety audits on numerous roadways throughout the county. Those were very successful projects. Y'all may have seen some of those, Cocoa Beach, Cocoa, a few other roadways throughout the county. And then in 2016, one of the first iterations of the Dangerous by Design report had come out, labeling the Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville area as the #2 ranked pedestrian danger index in the nation. So that graphic that you see there, that's not for Florida. That is the nationwide rankings that came out in 2016. So as you'll see, I believe there was 9 of the top 11 dangerous metropolitan areas, metro areas for pedestrians were in Florida. So there was a need, there was a culture change that needed to happen. FDOT came out with their Target Zero campaign and really launched that program to really start focusing on Vision Zero and really trying to drive those fatal and serious injury crashes down. In 2019, the Space Coast TPO Board adopted a resolution supporting Vision Zero, and that then led us into our first Vision Zero action plan that we finalized in 2020. Very collaborative effort. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next few slides. And then a really awesome goal that was achieved in 2022. All municipalities in Brevard County adopted the Vision Zero resolution. So that's huge to really kind of get that collaboration, get everybody on the same page, everybody striving towards Vision Zero in Brevard County. And then most recently, back in February of 2024, we updated the action plan. So it had been a few years. We wanted to update our crash data, wanted to make sure that our high injury network, which I'll talk about here in the next slide, has been updated for the most current safety trends based on the readily available data. So very quickly on that resolution. So the adopted resolution back in February 2024 supported the target of 0 fatalities and serious injuries with an adoption year of 2050. So that's the goal. Reduce Brevard County serious injuries and fatalities to 0 by 2050. It supports the continued efforts needed to implement the 2024 Vision Zero Action Plan, and it also supports education and engagement of the citizens, technical staff, and elected officials on what Vision Zero is and the Safe System approach. Really what we're doing today, what we're doing this week, and what we're going to continue moving forward with into the future. So a little bit on the why. I know we've been talking about the what. So why Vision Zero in Brevard County? So these are statistics from our latest Vision Zero action plan. Nearly a little bit over 2,700 people lost their lives or were seriously injured on Brevard County roadways from 2018 to 2022. So I'll just let that sink in. That is about one cruise ship worth of people. Now, obviously, cruise ships are getting bigger, so general average number, but about almost 3,000 people over 5 years died or were seriously injured on Brevard County roadways. So that is the why. That is why we are doing what we're doing. And then really, in terms of developing the action plan, the one thing I wanted to highlight is that collaboration is key. So I'll reemphasize that throughout the presentation today. I'll reemphasize that when we present to the board on Thursday. That collaboration is the key to making this a reality. And you see there, a lot of bullet lists, a lot of folks that participated in the action plan and continue to participate. So all of our local municipalities, we have law enforcement, we have FDOT, various groups, interest groups as well, and then some community members as well. So when we look at all of that data and synthesize it down to where are we having our problems, we like to refer to this as our high injury network. So there's a lot of roadways that you see up there that are highlighted in red, blue, green, or yellow. Those are for the different modes of travel that we analyzed our safety data from. So you have the vehicle mode, motorcycles, bicycles, and pedestrians. So those are the types of crashes that we analyzed for those fatal and serious injuries and where they were most occurring on our roadways in Brevard County. Some safety stats over on the side, but really the key takeaway, these are the roadways that we want to emphasize safety moving forward and hopefully implement safety strategies to help reduce those crashes. So then taking our high injury network, and that's going to be the basis for our targeted safety corridors. This was the next step in the iteration of our Vision Zero action plan, where these corridors kind of line up. So these are corridors that either have previous studies that have been done that have identified improvements on those corridors. So something that's kind of easy, kind of low-hanging fruit. It's identified on the high injury network. There's been strategies identified. Let's go out and build it. They're also in what we're calling our transportation disadvantaged areas as well. So that was a criteria that we used to help screen some of these corridors as well. And then you see there all the different projects or all the different studies that have been done that have helped identify this list. So road safety audits, safe routes to school studies, previous corridor planning studies, the bike ped master plan, and then the list of project priorities that you all go through and develop every year. So I mentioned a little bit about the safe system approach. So you see that pie chart show up again. So the core principles are around the outside. We've been talking a little bit about those, but really when we're digging into the types of safety strategies that we can implement, it's really rooted on kind of 5 key areas of that pie chart. And it's protecting and making our road users safe. It's making safer vehicles. It's making our folks drive safer speeds on those roadways. It's making the roadways inherently safer themselves. And then it's that post-crash care. So if and when, if a fatal or serious injury crash does occur, what are we able to do to kind of get those folks to a hospital quickly to help reduce that severity of that crash, or hopefully prevent that fatality if that crash does happen. So through our latest iteration of the Vision Zero Action Plan, you see 7 key objectives that came out of that plan, and then how we tied those back to each of the safe system approach kind of areas of the pie chart that you see on the left-hand side. So then very quickly, a few success stories. So coming out of the action plan, this really teed us up 4 different grant funding programs that have been kind of going around at the federal level. So the first being the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. Over the past 5 years, there's been $5 billion allocated by the federal government in that program to really improve safety on our on our street network throughout the country. And there's a couple different grants that come along with that. So you can apply for a planning and demonstration grant, which is a little bit further analysis to kind of identify projects that you want to move forward. And then there's implementation grants, and I'll talk through kind of both situations of those here on the next few slides. There's also the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program, which has $1.1 billion appropriated for that. And that's to really provide safer crossings where our roadways intersect with the FEC rail line and now Brightline running along train line as well. So specific success stories. So both of these occurring last year with the latest round of awards. So Brevard County applied for and won almost over $300,000 in supplemental planning activities. So basically taking some of those targeted safety corridors from the action plan, doing further safety analysis, doing some road safety audits, and then determining safety improvements that can be applied and help improve the safety on those corridors. And then another win was the city of Palm Bay. So they applied for an implementation grant on Emerson Drive. They received $2.4 million in federal funding to go out and improve roadway safety for folks that know this corridor. A couple schools along this road. It's a residential 2-lane road posted at 40 miles per hour, so people are driving fairly quickly. So the goal of this study is to really reduce speeds, make it safer for our students that are walking along this road, and also the residents as this goes through a residential neighborhood as well. And then the last, which was most recently awarded, was the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant awarded to the Space Coast TPO for nearly $5 million. This was a collaborative effort between Brevard County, Cocoa, Melbourne, and Brightline, along with the Space Coast TPO, to reduce or to enhance safety at 7 grade crossings where Brightline had not put up the quad gates as a part of their track reconstruction. So this comes back in and adds quad gates, adds some centerline medians as well to really help improve safety at those crossings. So overall, I don't want to understate the importance of these wins. These are national grants that were very competitive, that we are bringing dollars to the Space Coast to improve safety. So really, really kind of great to see that we're being competitive and we're going out and getting that money to improve safety. And then my last slide before Lorene comes up. So I had mentioned collaboration is key. And so, Abby and the rest of the TPO staff, their community outreach is amazing. You'll see a whole bunch of different stuff, and I'm not going to do it justice by trying to read everything that's on the screen here, but from the World Day of Remembrance to Mobility Week, the Space Coast TPO engages the community constantly, engages our partners, and works with them on that outreach to continue to push both safety forward and a lot of the other programs that the Space Coast TPO is working on. So with that, I think we're going to do a combined Q&A, if that's okay. So is Lorene going to come up, and then if that works? Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Very good. Thank you very much for having me here today, inviting me to share some of the efforts that the Florida Department of Transportation has to get to zero. My name is Lorene Bobo, and I am District 5 for FDOT's Safety Administrator. You'll see the map up there. We cover 9 counties here in Central Florida. What I'd like to share with you today is how we're going to get to zero together. This is just one small part of a lot of different efforts. So today, an average of 9 people will die on our roadways. Woke up this morning, they had breakfast. I know I'm going to my son's scout meeting tonight. I'm going to do everything in my power to get there, but there are 9 people today that will not happen. Another 44 are injured. Just think about that. It's a lot of people. So in District 5, last year, we lost 635 people on our roadways in our 9 counties. That's state roads, local roads, all roads. So we're all in this together. Our biggest issues are people are speeding, they're driving distracted, they're not wearing their seatbelt. That last one just totally boggles my mind. I'm nearing 50 years old, and I remember my parents' first car that I remember didn't have a seatbelt. But that first car that they did that had it, that car didn't move unless that seatbelt was on. My boys have learned that as well. And if I think it's 25% of our people that died last year did not have their seatbelt on, their chances of survival would have greatly increased, and they might still be here today. 28% of those fatalities were people walking and biking. Their bodies were very vulnerable. So that is why we really are focusing on those speeds, get those speeds down. So what's happening in Brevard County? Last year, we lost 88 people in Brevard County. 27% of those people were people walking and biking. The other aspect of this is that while most fatalities are happening on state roads, it's a close to a 50-50 split. So this is happening everywhere. It's not just on state roads. So this chart is sharing with you from our state highway safety plan, or I'm sorry, our Florida Strategic Highway Safety Plan. Where are our biggest issues? So that first grouping is what type of interactions? Are they happening at intersections? Are people leaving their lane? That middle area is road users. Who is being affected most in these crashes? And that bottom section is user behavior. So in this top one, what are our biggest issues? Lane departures, so people that are leaving the roadway. This happens often on our rural roads, especially if you're going those high speeds and something happens and now you're going off and you might hit a tree or a pole, things like that. Intersections, that's where you're seeing red light runners, T-bone crashes, turning movement. Somebody's making a left turn and misjudges how fast that other person's coming. Quite a few in work zones, which is near and dear to our heart, especially in all of our construction projects. And then rail crossings. And actually, just last year, FDOT started the very first rail safety coalition in the country. So that is a coalition of public and private folks coming together to get to zero fatalities along our railroads. This bottom section, these are the things that we can control, right? Driving distracted, impaired driving, occupant protection, wearing your seatbelt, driving the speed limit. So these are all actions that individuals are taking. We can have the safest roadway, but if you're looking at your phone, then you might not see that queuing traffic. And now we've got a bad crash. So in most crashes, a contributing factor is behavior. Doesn't mean it was the only thing that happened, but in most crashes, that was a human action that could have prevented that crash. And this is very important. We look at every fatal crash that occurs within District 5 on state roads. When we look at that, we try to understand what happened. Is it a recurring thing? Is there something in that intersection? Is there something along that roadway that we could do from an infrastructure standpoint? Most of the time, it is behavior, and that is what we have a hard time controlling. But what we can control, I'll go to that in a minute. So this chart is done every year, and it ranks counties and it ranks cities based on what is happening in those crashes. So you'll see here, Brevard County, it's listed in the category with the larger counties. You don't want a red box. That's not where you want to be. If you have a red box, that means you're in the top 40% of that grouping. That thing is happening in your county. So for Brevard County, it's speeding and aggressive driving. So that is something that we need to try to address here in Brevard County. Let me do this. All right. A little bit better way to see that. So getting to zero together. As you heard Travis talk about, in District 5, Brevard County, Space Coast TPO was the very first county that every single municipality, the school board, the TPO said 0 is the only acceptable number. I care about my residents. I care about people that are visiting. I want every single one of them to go home. And that's something to really applaud yourselves with. Now, several years later, that has happened with Metro Plan Orlando. There are 3 counties. Every city, every town has adopted Vision Zero, and they have action plans on the way. So more and more of that is happening. And doing that together is how we're going to get to zero. So thank you very much for leading that charge. You saw this pie chart earlier, the safe system approach. Very purposefully called the safe system approach, not safe systems. This is all one big system. All of these things need to happen in order for us to get to zero. Our roads need to be safer. Our users need to be safer. Vehicles need to be safer. All of these things need to happen to get to zero. So what I'm going to focus today on is speed. Remember, Brevard County is number 10 in the large counties in Florida. Why does that speed matter? If a vehicle is traveling at 40 miles per hour and has an interaction with somebody that's walking or biking, that person has a 10% chance of survival. Decent chance that they're not going home. But if you lower that speed by just 20 miles per hour, even 10 miles per hour, that chance of survival goes up to 90%. So much better chance that that person is going to go home. They might have a broken leg, they might have gotten hurt, but at least they're going home. That is why we're trying to get those speeds lowered. And when you look at our projects, we are trying to lower the speeds on some roads, but some we don't. It's purely, let's do these geometry changes to our roadway just so that people will go 45 and not 55 and 65, right? What can we do with our roadway projects to help influence that behavior? I was telling Chuck earlier, a few years ago when I'd first come into this role, I was really focusing on speed and trying to understand what we can do. So I was driving down a road. My car tells me what the speed limit is, right? Not all cars do that nowadays, but so I knew what the speed limit was. I didn't look at that, and I just drove what I was comfortable. I wasn't putting my foot to the metal and going as fast as I could. I was just, what is my comfort level of driving? And I was very easily going about 15 miles per hour over the speed limit. And as soon as I realized that, I was like, ooh, I need to slow down. But the point is, you're gonna drive what you're comfortable driving. Now, there are some people that I pass on I-4 every day that are just way too comfortable, yes. But your average person is just driving what you're comfortable driving. So doing these things on our roadways is making that comfort level a little bit lower, right? So now you're driving that speed limit, not because it's telling me on my dashboard that the speed limit's 45, but because that's what I'm comfortable driving. So that's what I'd like to share a little bit about today. So what are some effective speed management strategies? We have enclosure, engagement, deflection. So what do those mean? Enclosure, and narrow that road down. Ooh, I don't have a wide open spanse that I can just go really fast. So it kind of closes you in. We can do that with landscaping, lane narrowing. Engagement. What are some things that are, kind of causing me to pay attention to driving? Deflection. It's just a straight road. You're going to tend to go faster, right? 'Cause you just feel like, okay, I'm just going to go straight. But if there's some curves, little chicanes, now I have to drive. I have to pay attention, which you should be doing anyways, but I'm sure we've all done this. I get in the car after work, somehow I made it home. I don't remember, I'm listening to the radio, doing whatever, doing my everyday type of thing. Somehow I got there, but it makes you pay attention. So the three things I'm going to talk about are lane narrowing, raised crosswalks, and roundabouts. So lane narrowing. So this chart is from our FDOT design manual. Our design manual has to meet the minimum requirements, national standards. So AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, wasn't sure I was going to get that out the first time, but it basically sets the standard that all states follow. So most of our, getting off the interstate, most of our roadways are recommended to be in that 10 to 11 foot lanes. So this is a snapshot of 192, kind of closer to I-95. So that project has been done for many years now. And those lanes, I know it's hard to see on here, but those lanes are 11 foot on the outside, 10 foot on the inside. Every day people are driving that corridor without a problem. This is the project just further east on 192 that it's currently under construction. Those outside lanes are 11 foot, those inside lanes are 10 foot, matching what's out west. And they might feel uncomfortable, right? If you've got a bigger truck or you're pulling a trailer, but you fit, and it's causing you to go a little bit slower, which is exactly what we want to do. Raised crosswalks. I know this is quite a topic in Brevard County. This is the deflection, right? When you're coming up to that raised crosswalk, there's signs that tell you what speed you should be going. There's arrows that kind of tell you, hey, something's happening here. They are causing you to slow down, which is exactly what we want to happen. Because what we're telling you is in this area, people are walking and biking. And we don't want them to not go home. So they are effective. The picture on the right is in Orlando and off OBT, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that project in a minute, so I'll save my comments on that. Ormond Beach, these have been out there for probably a year and a half now, and they're slowing people down. They're very effective. We're putting them in all across the district. ICE, intersection control evaluation. So I wanted to share this before I talk about roundabouts. Every single project that we have, every intersection, we don't go in with a preconceived what this intersection should look like. We go through an evaluation. It's consistent across all intersections. This way, we know that we're building the proper intersection control for that intersection. Because while we have a lot of similar intersections, no two intersections, are equal or they're not the same. So we want to make sure we're putting in the right traffic control. Roundabouts are one of those traffic controls. Get my numbers right. So the biggest thing that I like about a roundabout is it eliminates a lot of those conflict points, opportunities for two vehicles to interact. From 32 potential opportunities for vehicles to interact down to 8. They slow you down. The way that FDOT designs ours is there's a little geometry change. So you just naturally are going slower through that interaction. They're very efficient. Oh, video didn't work. Okay. Well, imagine that those vehicles are traveling in that roundabout. It's some drone footage of one of our roundabouts. Also, over in Brevard County, if there's a hurricane, signals go out, we don't have power, guess what? Roundabout's still going. It's still moving. People are still doing what they were doing when we had power. They're very, very efficient. You keep moving. You're not sitting at a signal. This morning I was dropping off my son, and I've actually got to call my signal guru because I sat there for 5 minutes, you know, and I'm in this industry, and I was getting very impatient. I kept my cool, but I also knew I was driving out to Brevard County. I live in Altamont, and so I knew I wanted to get on the road and get my trip going. But for 5 minutes, I sat there at that intersection. If it had been a roundabout, I would have slowed down, yielded, gone around, gotten to school much more quickly. So they do work. Next slide. So in District 5, we have built, it's actually 10, I remembered one more after I sent this slide, 10 roundabouts. We've got another one under construction and a couple more that are being planned. In the before condition, we had 13 fatalities at those intersections, another 17 serious injuries. After, 1 fatality. He was going 120 miles per hour. So I'm not really sure that it was the roundabout that caused his crash. And then an 8 have been seriously injured. And reading through those crash reports, many are, they're going very fast. I think there was some intoxication and things like that. So it wasn't necessarily the roundabout that contributed to that, to those crashes. There we go. Okay. So I mentioned the OBT project earlier. So this project was one that we threw every countermeasure at. It was our deadliest mile within District 5. Lots of transit, people walking and biking, just they were crossing anywhere and everywhere. And yeah, so we were losing about 1 to 5 people a year in this 1 mile. So we threw everything at it. We threw in raised crosswalks, pedestrian hybrid beacons, lane narrowing, speed feedback signs, in-road lighting, and then a channelization barrier, which I really feel is probably the cherry on top that really has saved lives. Basically, it's a fence that goes down the entire median. So it really forces those people walking to only cross where those crossings are. In this mile, we have crossings about every 600 feet. So it's a lot. I think a lot of times people cross where they would like to cross because they don't want to walk that far, which I totally understand. We lowered the speed through here, about 5 miles per hour. People are driving the speed that we want them to drive because of those raised crosswalks, because of those narrower lanes. We worked with the transit agency links to make sure that that outside lane was wider for them to comfortably travel through that corridor. We do a lot of coordination with folks like that. Oh. But what I really want to say about this project is that we've had 0 fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, since August of 2022. So it works. It works. So FDOT really does want to make sure that we're building the right project for that community. So from the very beginning, when we've identified a project, which oftentimes is related to a resurfacing, we drive every mile of road in the state of Florida, so we understand how that pavement is going, so we know 5 years out, we're going to be time for this resurfacing. So we look at that corridor and we go, what's happening on this corridor? Are there a lot of high crashes? Is it on the high injury network? What's happening? What can we implement within that project that might save lives and get to 0 on that segment of roadway. But we don't do that in a bubble. We do that with our local stakeholders, might be county, city, town. Maybe there's a development group in that area. Whoever lives there and knows that area, we want to hear from them. What are your concerns with this corridor? People driving too fast? Whatever it may be, we do public meetings to make sure that we're hearing from everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that we're able to accommodate everything, but it means we're at the table, all the right people are at the table, we're coming to a compromise with that common goal of getting to zero. So to help with this effort, we released the Central Florida Safety Strategic Plan just last year in 2024. When the Office of Safety was created in 2021, this was something that we wanted to do. How do we get everybody together over 9 counties to really be moving towards that common goal of getting to zero? So we developed this plan with folks like yourself. We had 3 workshops across our 9 counties. We got feedback, we got ideas, and then we culminated it into this safety strategic plan. If you'd like to check it out, it's available on our website at that QR code or FDOT.gov D5 Safety. We released this plan at our first annual Central Florida Safety Summit. It was held in Orange County and SeaWorld last May. We had nearly 230 people from across the 9 counties who attended and said, you know what, this is something that's important to me and I want to see what I can do. You are all invited to attend our 2nd annual Safety Summit on May 9th. It will be held at the Daytona International Speedway. We're really excited to see what progress that we've made over this past year. The Central Florida Safety Strategic Plan does have a steering committee made up of members from across all 9 counties and each of the MPOs and TPOs. Commissioner Don Willis from Cape Canaveral is on that board, and he's actually agreed to host our next steering committee meeting in April. So we're really excited to see how this has progressed. I'd like to finish all of my presentations with a safety second because it takes just a second to be safe. I am Irish, so I couldn't resist but putting in an Irish safety message. So just, don't rely on luck to make it home at the end of the day. Do what you can. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb. My husband gets very frustrated because I always do not disturb, and he's like, didn't you get my text? Why didn't you call me? And I'm like, driving. I want to come home. So just please consider using Do Not Disturb if you do not already. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
I think Travis is going to come up here as well, and we can have some Q&A. Go ahead, Bill.
I live in Cocoa Beach. They put in the bumps. They're not very happy in Cocoa Beach. They dropped the speed limit down to 30 miles an hour on A1A.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very happy. Maybe you can help me with that as to what the background is.
Absolutely. So I actually have a 1 o'clock meeting with Cocoa Beach regarding those raised crosswalks. So the history is we've had fatalities on that corridor. So when we started developing that project probably 3 or 4 years ago, we worked with Cocoa Beach, and what we heard was that they wanted slower speeds, that they wanted more crossings for people walking and biking. So we developed a project that had, I think, 6 crossings, 6 in each of the pairs, right? So both sides, so 12. Early last year, there was some concern about having too many raised crosswalks. So we did go to the Cocoa Beach Commission and gave them some different options to choose from. And where we landed was 1 raised crosswalk at the beginning of all of those crossings to get that speed down. So at least as you're, going through that area, you're going at that lower 30 miles per hour speed limit.
The bump says 20 miles an hour.
The advisory at the bump is 20. but the rest of that corridor went from 35 to 30. So that's how we got there.
That's a study period? Is it going to be, like, after a year, they're going to look at the results?
So, I mean, we're hoping that we're able to keep them out there because that's how we lower that speed, right? Because we talked earlier about that deflection. People are going to drive what they're comfortable. So if we don't have that bump, people are going to want to drive faster because that is what is going to be more comfortable. All of these types of countermeasures that we put out, we're always evaluating them. We're doing a lot of before and after to understand what's effective, what works, what doesn't work. So the meeting this afternoon is to talk about what's out there and see if there's any adjustments that we can make.
Cocoa Beach is somewhat unique in that every week a new group of old people come in, older than me even. So that's one of our concerns, that whatever you do doesn't get to the people that just came in.
Mm-hmm.
See them over the steering wheel, it's kind of critical.
Well, we hope that people see the various signs that are ahead of those raised crosswalks, telling them to lower their speeds.
They have a really tough time on the split highway. I mean, they turn left on the southbound lanes.
Well, it's not the raised crosswalks' fault, so we'll have to figure out if there's something else we can do for that. Thank you for sharing.
John?
Yeah, so it's not just old people that are going in the wrong direction. It's my experience
Okay.
on Friday afternoon. I drive that route every day, twice a day.
Okay.
And so a couple of things. One is you may have created drag races between the bumps because people go down for the bump and then they just want to go until the next one. So that just might be something that in your after action report you kind of take a look at.
Okay.
You kind of raised, this guy over here raised a question that I had. Now I thought that was a 30-mile, like you could hit that bump at 30 miles an hour and not rip out your undercarriage. Apparently that's not the case.
It's posted at 20, at the actual
And who
raised
reads mine?
crosswalk.
I certainly don't, but I can take that. But the most important question I have to ask you now is Target Zero taught in driver's education classes?
I doubt it.
That's a shame. That should be something that somebody kind of emphasizes and makes
I
a priority.
100% agree with you. We have found that one, driver's education is not offered a whole lot in the schools. I know in, like, my son, he's 13, but he's going to be getting there real soon to drive, and there's only like 30 spots a semester at his school. So he's going to hopefully get into there. It's not reaching a lot of people in general. But then also, we've also found that it's difficult to, when people need to renew their driver's license, for example. Last time I read the driver's handbook was 1992. I have read it since then, so it's not a complete true statement, but because of my job. But there is nothing that says that I should be reading that, and it's updated every 2 years. So RFBs, PHBs is in it now, but it wasn't there before. So I very much agree with you, and we actually are working on, with the Department of Highway Safety Motor Vehicles, who has the driver's handbook and that type of thing, to figure out ways to get to more people with messages like this.
The advisory speed comment that you made was pretty interesting. You said, I don't look at it, or people don't look at it, and they just drive. So if you're coming up on a roadway curve and you see that advisory speed, are you going to still go 70 miles an hour around that curve, or you get off the interstate and you go 70 miles an hour to get off the interstate? You probably are going to look at that advisory speed sign and be like, okay, I probably need to at least get close to that. So I don't want folks to look at the raised crosswalk and then blame that sign and be like, oh, well, I'm not driving that. So it's the crossing is a geometric feature of the roadway. Those advisory speed signs are there to help folks drive that speed for that geometry. So whether it's a speed hump, whether it's an intersection, whether it's a roundabout, whether it's getting off I-95, the advisory speed signs are there to help
I'm actually going to
Good.
And not just you. I'm just saying just in general that to relate it back to the speed hump itself or the race crossing itself. I don't look at those as being mutually exclusive.
Pete?
Lauren, I'm going to give you the trail. There, they will wake you up, and they will slow you down. By day 2, I was looking, and I was going to hit another one.
Mhm.
While I was there, I wanted to see the work you did on the trail. And remember, this is 2022,
Mhm.
and I was impressed. I mean, especially the way the trail is cleaned up. It didn't look as run down as it used to, but the fence wasn't there yet.
Ah, okay. Yeah, it probably went in, I don't know exactly when it went in. The project completed in October of '23. So what we were observing during the design was that there might be a bus transit stop on one side, right? And there might be a signalized crossing 1,000 feet away, but people wanted to go to this transit stop it was right there, right? And so they were just going mid-block everywhere.
You had a red light every quarter mile. On demand, it doesn't get any better than that. And so when I heard that there was an issue with jaywalking, I said, well, there's the human element in putting the fence up. You kind of heard it, everybody.
Exactly. Yes.
Greg?
Yeah, Lorraine. First off, as far as education, I not long ago I was recently awarded a citation, so I got a very good education going through class. That's one way to take your time. But my real comment has to do with roundabouts, and I've been through the FDOT site extensively. There is a lot of information on that. Even in your presentation, you present a lot on roundabouts. One of the deficiencies I see in that is they're always single lane roundabouts. And I have had several close calls, double lane roundabouts. And even on the FDOT website, there is a mention of how to use a double lane roundabout, but there's no actual example or video instruction on how to do that. And so I wanted to pass that on to you because I am in favor of roundabouts, but people have to know how to use them. And some of us could say the same thing about railroad crossings.
Well, I appreciate the comment. It's a very good observation. And we actually are actively going through an effort right now to create some double lane roundabout videos, how to use them and that type of thing, because that was a deficiency that we saw as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
County road? Is it a state road?
Yeah,
Okay.
State Road.
Okay. Okay. I can take that back and look at it and see if we've got any projects that are coming up. But a lot of these same lane narrowing is nice because it's very inexpensive. We either put the stripe here or we put the stripe here, right? It doesn't cost any more in construction to do. And so if there is a project that's coming up, a resurfacing project, that's something that's very easily implementable, but I'll take that back, 404.
I've noticed with the lane narrowing projects you've done on existing roads, it gives an opportunity to enhance the bike lane, make the bike lane bigger,
Yes.
and also make a double solid line for the bike lane, and that's really nice.
Yep, that's a great point.
Any other questions? Yes, Bob?
So it's a good question. I don't know that explicitly if it tells us back that it's not functioning. But I would imagine, like, let's say it's a pedestrian hybrid beacon or an RFB. It's only activated when the pedestrian pushes it, right? So I guess your point might be the light doesn't come on. Well, so that's part of behavior and responsibility, in my opinion, right? So before you walk out into that crosswalk, that person walking or biking should be making sure that that vehicle stopped. When I go into schools and I talk to the students, what I teach them is, before you put your foot out there, you make eye contact with that driver and make sure that they're stopping, right? And it's the state law that you stop for somebody that's in a crosswalk, whether there's no lights, it's the state law to stop for them. But that's a responsibility on the person walking, biking, and the driver, right? Making sure. So I don't know that there would be litigation with that. We work very closely. Typically, those are being maintained by the local entity, the county or the city. So we would just make sure that we get that. But that's a good question. I'll have to ask if we're able to tell. Okay. Could be a sticker or something that we put on something. Okay. That's a good idea.
Go ahead, Pete.
We always consider the inside lane, which is called the passing lane, the fast lane, and the outside lane, we always call that the slow lane. And your design on the fast lane, you narrowed it down to 10 feet, and on the slow lane, you left it wide. Do you want to speed cars up on the slow lane?
No, but it's keeping in mind for transit, going to be in that outside lane, right? That's where they're doing their pickups and their drop-offs. So that's probably one of the main reasons why it's on the outside versus the inside. It's not a fast lane, it's a passing lane, like you said.
Nice.
Now, we know why you did it.
Yeah.
Now, we know why you did it.
No, I know.
They don't have separate speed limits.
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
Well, I've got more of a statement and then a question. The first one is, I've seen quite a few accidents recently, almost all of them, if they're paying attention. Like recently, sorry, I know I talk quietly. I was rear-ended by a 19-year-old girl texting and driving at 40 miles an hour. So again, if she was paying attention, that wouldn't have happened. So me being new here, I am very happy to see this is being taken as given the seriousness it deserves. So I am happy to see that. And the second thing, on your slide of fatalities, I saw the chart ended in 2023. If I remember right, didn't Brightline begin trailing end of 2023? So do you have an updated railway accident statistic for that?
I can pull those from Signal 4 Analytics. Signal 4 Analytics has all of our crash data.
Okay.
The reason that that chart ended in 2023 is because it's updated every 5 years.
Okay.
So for that particular chart, but we can get that to you.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Go ahead, Yvonne.
I have a couple roundabouts. I'd like to just piggyback off of that, and specifically speaking about the one in Vieira. That is good and it's more bad in my opinion. I've almost T-boned someone. I'm in the inside lane, trying to go around. They are trying to go north and just cut right in front of me. If I was going a mile faster, I would have T-boned. That's happened several times. I think it's good. It's very good. But do we have any statistics? I know this is very good and definitely promoting it. Are there any statistics on any accidents, incidents on in roundabouts?
So you'll see that top left is if we change from a stop control, so stop signs, to a roundabout, we reduce fatal and injury crashes by 82% on average. From a signalized to a roundabout is 78%. So roundabout doesn't mean you're not going to have crashes anymore. It reduces the effects of those crashes. So with the typical, stop control or signal, that's where we see those like true T-bone crashes, high rate of speed. Roundabout should be kind of slowing you down. And I'm not as familiar with Vieira because it's not a state road one. I did look up the crashes for Vieira, and in the last 10 years, there have been 0 fatalities at the Vieira roundabout. So
That was my recollection as well.
Yeah. So there may have been some close calls, but there have not been any fatalities at that.
May not have been any fatalities, but I would assume that there have been many crashes there. I mean, a lot of people aren't paying attention.
Right.
I am.
It doesn't completely eliminate crashes.
Right. Okay. My next question is with the raised crossings and on the main thoroughfares, if you will, and specifically speaking about Sorno Road in Melbourne, it's a racetrack. I know I've gone. I'm not going to admit we don't have any police about going too fast on that, and we've had several fatalities, mostly at Croton and Sarno. So I think that would, if we can entertain that, or to look, do a study to narrow Sarno, or consider maybe 5, 10, not however long it's going to take years to get that done. But it definitely is, in my opinion, it needs to be addressed. I mean, it's wide open. The streets are very wide, there. So definitely, you're going to speed. So if that is entertained to address that. Do we have any statistics on I think I'm looking at the cities for, and maybe that's with Brightline, the project that's with City of Melbourne, Cocoa, and Brevard County. Where are those new gates and all going to be installed? Because the main two that happened in Melbourne, South Melbourne, that was in the district that I represented, and B Avenue, and I know Cocoa is also on maps as well. It's very troubling, but I'd like to know where those gates, or the new gates,
I'd have to look and get back to you because I do not know top of my head. I don't know. Laura, I don't remember exactly what.
I actually have them here, believe
Okay,
it or not.
perfect. Georgiana's going to bail me out.
Yes, so Michigan, Dixon Boulevard, West Highland Drive, Masterson, New Haven, Line Street, or W.H. Jackson, and Holly Street. So those are the proposed enhancements for the 7 grade crossings, which would include the new exit gates to ensure there are quad gates, and the medians would be going in on Michigan on both sides there. Yep. So those are the 7 crossings. And to your point, there were two crossings in the city of Melbourne that we could not include. But basically what this will do is seal, it will help to seal the corridor. These are some areas where, several of them in particular, there have been some fatalities.
Okay, may I ask, what are those 2 crossings?
So,
I thought it was
Prospect and Jernigan, those were the 2 crossings that there was an underlying right-of-way agreement dispute between the City of Melbourne and the Florida East Coast Railway. So we had to hold, those 2 crossings could not be included in this particular grant because of that. And I know that it was talked about at City Council meeting as well. We were really, really hopeful that it could be incorporated into this grant. But we're excited to get as much as we could. And as soon as, we can move forward with developing a grant agreement with the Federal Highway Administration, we can kind of move forward. But that takes time, as you know. You're dealing with federal funds, but we got the award, and so it's a process. So we're anxiously awaiting to kind of move through that.
Okay, you did jog on my mind back to that. I do recall those conversations coming up on council.
All right.
Ginger, you had a question?
Law enforcement's is a big part of this. It is a very big partnership that we have with law enforcement. We have what's called Community Traffic Safety Teams, CTSTs. Every county has one, and they meet monthly. And there's folks from law enforcement, from city level, as well as state level, as well as county level that attend those meetings, along with engineers and many others, and they talk about what's happening in that county. We're actually, this might be the first ones to kind of hear this, we're developing a program right now where we're going to be able to give law enforcement some of the equipment that they need. Radar guns, speed trailers, guardian lights, things. Stop sticks, yeah. Whatever those things are, it's very difficult. They don't have the funding to buy a lot of those things, but we do. And so the partnership that we're hoping to be able to announce is that if they're doing enforcement along a higher injury network roadway, or we've been hearing things, say, hey, can you go do this roadway during your normal hours, so it's not necessarily overtime, and those hours would equate to points, and then, so many points to get a radar gun, so many points to get a speed trailer, that type of thing. So we're just trying to get all the pieces and parts together right now, but they're a big part of it, big part of it.
And also on the TPO level, Abby has, last year, she set up, we went on a law enforcement tour, and so the TPO staff, we printed off all of our high injury network maps, met with each law enforcement agency in Brevard County, as well as the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, and just sat down with them. We went over the maps, great meetings just for us to get to know each other and to talk about how we can help each other. And also, what areas can we do public outreach and education as well. So great partners, and they're very willing to help us in that process.
And then to piggyback on the piggyback, so going all the way back to plan, Division Zero Action Plan, so Park County Sheriff, and then there were all the local police units as well that participated in the plan development. There are strategies that are supporting law enforcement efforts in the county, and then also the Vision Zero leadership team, which meets quarterly. There are law enforcement representatives from various municipalities on that as well. So a lot of touch points.
Pete,
I'd like to pipe in on that law enforcement. Where Lauren lives, Altamont Springs, we know you don't speed in Altamont Springs or Winter Springs. Now, how do we know that? That's because locally, they've taken the initiative to crack down on speeding. It's not a state problem. We have county, we have city. It's our problem to get our local municipalities to start enforcing the speeding laws. And that happens through our city council, our mayor, our city managers. They can only do so much on the state level. In the city of Altamont Springs, they seem to have it under control a lot better than we do here in Brevard County. It's a local effort more than it is a state effort.
I don't speed anywhere. I'm sorry. I don't speed anywhere.
So I think Abby wanted to add something.
Speak to so for our law enforcement agencies, on top of what was already mentioned up here, I would say especially in the last 2 to 3 years, really seen a step up in participation in other programs like high visibility enforcement, which I know sometimes is not real tickets, but it's education through enforcement. And then also now with our partnership with Best Foot Forward, Operation Best Foot Forward, which is a pedestrian focused program. So I really do think there's a 2-part process. It's like they're low on resources and funding, but at the same time, the TPO tries to step in and help and supplement. A good example can be Satellite Beach just reached out to me to say, we're seeing e-bike issues, right? Beachside. Can we put out some information? What resources do we have? Even if it's just education. So we provided them with messaging and graphics. And so just to have something that they can put out to their communities. So I do think in the last couple of years, we've seen kind of a transition with law enforcement. That they know that they have a part to play in the education and the enforcement side. So, but it's an ongoing, it's an ongoing battle that we all have to engage in. So I just want to give them kudos because many of them have definitely tapped into the high visibility enforcement. I've seen speed campaigns recently. Distracted driving most likely in April will come up because it's Distracted Driving Awareness Month. So they're doing as best as they can, as we all are.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. I do have a comment. Lorraine and Travis, thank you for being here today. I'm a vulnerable road user myself. I'm an avid cyclist and runner, and I'm part of that community here in the area, and I also drive. So, one of the things that I think is really important is that, as a road user, we all put ourselves in the other person's shoes, that person that's on the bike or crossing the road. And it was mentioned earlier that, our bodies are fragile, right? I actually was in a serious bike accident in October, which I'm still recovering from. But it's true, our vehicles are 3,000 pounds, 4,000 pounds, and somebody on a bike, somebody crossing the road is tremendously vulnerable. And, ultimately the work that's being done here at the TPO, the partnership with the state, is really, really important. It's a step forward. It's a step in the right direction. And I think as a group, we all need to get around this and really applaud and move this initiative forward. And I just want to say thank you and keep up the good work.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're going to move into the reports section of our agenda today, and our first report will be from the Florida Department of Transportation. Morning, sir.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the TAC-CAC Committee, I am Chuck Coppernell with the Florida Department of Transportation. In the interest of time allocated for the safety presentations and the other presentations we have, I only have a few short announcements. First of all, I'd like to mention that January 30th and 31st, Florida Department of Transportation held a Central Florida Construction Career Day, at which event 1,500 Central Florida high school and technical students attended to learn about the fantastic career opportunities at FDOT at this hiring event. And also, in April 30th of 2025, the FDOT will be hosting its inaugural transportation industry hiring event, which will be located at the Osceola Heritage Park in Kissimmee, Florida. I sent a flyer to Zoe McNeely with Space Coast TPO, and she went ahead and forwarded it to everybody on the contact list. However, if you did not get that email, or if you can't locate it, you can reach out to me, myself, or Zoe, and we'll be sure to get it to you right away. Okay, the joint certification review, we have to do this every year. It's between the TPO and the Florida Department of Transportation, just to make sure that compliance is being followed on all federal and state regulation as far as use of funds that are allocated for the running of the TPO. And I would just like to say very quickly that they have succeeded all expectations. They did it perfectly and received a 100% score and are therefore a low risk. So once again, congratulations to the staff of the Space Coast TPO of keeping it all together. Very good. Oops. Okay. So with that, I'd like to conclude that the February construction report is in the agenda packet on page 44. But of course, if you have any questions on any particular project or just need to talk to me about anything in general, I will be available after the meeting to address any concerns or questions you may have. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, this concludes my report.
Questions for Chuck?
Bill. Restrictions on dollars as a result of all of the evaluations that are going on now.
Am I seeing any
Well,
with the Doge?
yes.
Yes, okay. I haven't personally seen anything, and nothing has come down about any effects. So as of now, everything is still pretty much quid pro quo. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, are they? Okay. Thank you for that. I'll double. Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'll make sure that gets taken care of.
Anything else for Chuck?
Bill? Yep, nothing.
Okay, thank you, Chuck.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
you
you.
being here today. Next up is the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Advisory Committee. Morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner, Space Coast TPO. Well, it is an exciting time for trails. The TPO right now, we have two big projects underway internally, as well as also there are several other projects that FDOT is working on. But I would just like to highlight some of the activities that are happening. So we just held 2 public workshops, and kudos and huge thanks to Jason and Jessica at Grant Valcaria for hosting us on February 25th. We had over 50 attendees come out and participate in our public workshop on the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan. This is an incredible turnout for any project, but especially seeing as we are so far south, and we really appreciate everyone coming out. And of course, thank you to all of the TAC-CAC members and attendees that came out as well. We then followed up that in-person public workshop with a virtual lunch and learn on March 4th. And so we had 21 attendees that participated as well in the virtual element, provided us some live feedback via Mentimeter, and then we do currently have a web map that is out there for review until the 21st for anyone who would like to provide comments on the trail network that's being developed. The other project that I wanted to highlight is our North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail Feasibility Study. This is a project that we are conducting on behalf of Brevard County and was funded via Sun Trails funding. And so we will be having an in-person on March 26th at the Moose Lodge on Courtney Parkway, and then a virtual lunch and learn on April 1st at noon. So we encourage you to get involved with all of these public engagement activities, and go out and review the meeting materials if you are unable to attend the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan workshops and want to get involved. Finally, the next BPAC meeting will be held on April 28th at 5:30 at the Vieira Government Center, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Sarah. Anything for Sarah?
Thank you.
Next up is Space Coast Area Transit. Good morning.
Morning. Tim Sheriff, Transit Planner, Space Coast Area Transit. Just a few items. The Transportation Development Plan has been completed and was presented to the Board of County Commissioners last month for adoption. Transit staff is working with the vendor to update the scheduling software for our paratransit service. The system will give passengers a 24-hour confirmation call and allow passengers to cancel on the phone if needed. The system will alert passengers when the pickup is approximately 15 minutes from their location. It will help alleviate the call volume to the customer service center, among other benefits. Space Coast Advertising has made upgrades to the ADA portion of the 321 Transit website, which provides conversational answers to frequently asked questions. December fixed route ridership saw an increase of 5.96%. January fixed route ridership saw an increase of 3.19%. And year to date, the increase is 4.86%. Concludes my.
Thank you. Any questions? Greg?
Yeah, just help me understand. We know you have the Volunteer in Motion program.
Yes.
Does that in any way correlate with the MOV?
I don't think it will, because Volunteers in Motion is a service that provides rides to people that need a level of help that a fixed route or even a paratransit route cannot provide. So I don't see.
So I know my wife's been volunteering with that group for years now.
Okay.
So how I see that is basically you have elderly, visually impaired, physically impaired, and it's basically providing them door-to-door service to doctor's appointments and all of that.
Yeah.
So it would do no good to drop them off at a transit center because they're going to be outside of a area.
Exactly. There's a type of person that might need to be walked right into the office desk of a doctor's office and that kind of thing. It also offers a level of flexibility that a fixed route or a paratransit wouldn't. For example, if somebody comes out of the doctor's office, oh, I have a prescription I need to get filled now. If there's time, they can then go to the doctor's pharmacy and have that filled.
Invaluable service. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Next up, Abby is going to give the public engagement report.
Good morning. Before we chat about some of our upcoming public engagement activities, I just wanted to recap a few things that have happened since we last met. So first, hopefully you saw these amazing posts out across the community. In early February, we encouraged local schools and our law enforcement agencies to recognize Crossing Guard Appreciation Day. These are our safety superheroes who help our kids every day to school, and it's really a thankless job sometimes. And so Space Coast TPO provided partners and schools with a digital outreach toolkit that included card templates, certificates of appreciation, recognition letters, to show their gratitude really towards these safety superheroes. And so the participation was fantastic across the county. I really want to commend our law enforcement agencies that maybe went above and beyond to make sure that they thanked every crossing guard. Some of our municipalities and our areas have, larger crossing guards in quantity-wise versus others. So just thank you to our municipalities and our partners that shared out either our posts or their own messages. And then moving on to some public safety outreach wins, Operation Best Foot Forward took place over the last couple months across Brevard County in specific areas. And again, for those who don't know, Operation BFF, people cross the street in marked crosswalks. giving drivers plenty of time to stop. Those who don't stop are either given warnings, citation by law enforcement, or via education. Most of the time, it's actual citations. And so this is just a brief snapshot of some pictures of Brevard County Sheriff's Office that participated. Titusville PD also participated as well. And then also at the end of the month, we had a blast supporting our community partners up in the Titusville area for their annual Write It Down event. This is a great celebration in the North area. We chat with local bicyclists, a lot of visiting bicyclists that come in from all over the state, and we really talk about the importance of staying safe on our roadways. We were promoting our trails, open houses that were happening, and we also passed out some safety resources and some goodies for the riders. So if you're not aware, it's Florida Bicycle Month, and we've kicked off a month-long celebration in support of the Florida Bicycle Association, which encourages bicycling and recognizes the important role that bicycling is a mode of transportation and recreation for millions of Florida's residents and visitors. So during the month of March, we'll be promoting timely topics like youth bike safety during spring break, Brevard's best trails, bicycle laws, proper helmet fit, and more. So we'll be collaborating with our partners and also hosting some outreach events as well. So here's a quick highlight of our current plan outreach efforts in March. As Sarah already mentioned, a big focus is going to be our North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail feasibility, public engagement opportunities, but also we're going to be out in the community down in Grant Valcaria at the end of the month, and then also be participating in Brevard Public Schools Employee Health and Wellness Fair for the first time. Hopefully you know this, but as far back as history books take us, women have been pioneers in the transportation industry, from inventors to entrepreneurs to civil engineers. So stay tuned to our social media channels as we highlight women who have really been trailblazers in transportation in our industry and have kind of revolutionized the game. So to support Women's History Month. And then just to close us out, please make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels. Here's a glance at some of the topics that we'll be covering in March. Specifically, we're really excited to work on a campaign for Distracted Driving Awareness Month. We'll be reaching out to our law enforcement agencies to support us in this initiative, hopefully seeing some enforcement campaigns out in the community. So really focus on April to get that message out because we know it's a prevalent trending thing that we're seeing in our crash data. With that, I'll end.
Okay, thank you, Abby. Good job. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. I would say that when we're doing any education campaign or outreach event, we definitely highlight that all road users have a part to play. So I can think of a post specifically. We have one when you're using a multi-paved trail. So we're bicyclists and pedestrians, and we say like, be courteous, right? So it's on both of you to make sure that you're communicating with each other. But yeah, specifically for bike safety, we really hone in on the laws, but it's definitely something that we can, bring to light in one of our posts for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I can also speak to our education programs. When we have a specific program that when we go to present to young children or adults, it's called Roll Right. And when we talk about that program, we do mention audible, making sure that you communicate on your right, coming up, on your left. So we make sure that it's part of our programs. But again, it takes the village to spread that message.
Yeah, it's a good point. I see it out there too. And, I appreciate cyclists that have a bell or say on your left, and that's something that I try to do. But oftentimes I see that that's not the case. And, sometimes the pedestrian, the closing speed of a bike and someone walking, it can be pretty fast. And I've even seen it where, the pedestrian has, they're listening to music too. So Abby's right. It's on, everybody has to do their part, right?
But thank you for bringing it to my attention because I could definitely use a post and focus on it.
Mike?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, in the spring, I definitely want to do a proven countermeasures campaign. I will say back in September, and I brought it to the committees and board, we participated in a campaign, created one really for National Roundabouts Week, and it got the most reaches and shares and comments, whether they were negative or positive, at least they're talking about it. Yeah. So I think it would be good to do, especially after Lorene also presents to our governing board, I think it would be really great to do a proven countermeasures campaign, not just roundabouts, but also some of these other things that are truly, data driven to save lives. I think that's a great idea.
Good. Anything else for Abby? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Last, we have the local government report. Are there any representatives from local government that would like to say anything? Okay. Is there anything else to be brought forth in front of these committees? All right. Then we will adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great meeting.